The massive chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward into shadows that seemed to swallow light itself. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, each area carefully designed to accommodate their unique physiological needs. The Aquari delegation floated in pressurized water tanks, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The silicon-based crystallines stood motionless as statues, their faceted forms refracting the chamber's artificial starlight into rainbow fragments across the walls. At the center of this vast assembly sat the Council of Five, the most ancient and powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The Vorthak, whose empire spanned 3 spiral arms, dominated the central throne with their towering insectoid forms. To their right, the energy beings known as the Ethereals flickered between dimensions, their voices echoing from multiple realities simultaneously. The machine intelligence called the Collective hummed with the processing power of 1 billion worlds, while the plant-like Verdani swayed gently. Their root networks connected to every garden world in their territory. And then there were the humans. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood at the speaker's podium, her simple black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate displays of alien technology and biological adaptation surrounding her. She was 43 years old, with graying hair pulled back in a practical bun and tired eyes that had seen too many of these sessions end in disappointment. Behind her, the small human delegation of 5 individuals looked almost comically insignificant in the vast chamber. The Terran Federation formally requests consideration for full membership in the Galactic Council, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrices that converted her words into the hundreds of languages and communication methods represented in the chamber. We believe our species has much to offer this august body. A sound that might have been laughter rippled through the chamber, though it came out as clicks, whistles, subsonic rumbles, and electromagnetic pulses depending on the species. The Vorthak Prime Speaker, a creature whose carapace gleamed like polished obsidian, leaned forward on the central throne. Humans, the Prime Speaker's translated voice dripped with what Sarah had learned to recognize as Vorthak condescension. You have been petitioning this council for membership for how long now? 50 of your years. 57 years, Prime Speaker, Sarah replied evenly. She had been preparing for this moment for months, and before her, 12 other human ambassadors had stood in this exact spot, making the same arguments to the same dismissive audience. 57 years, the Prime Speaker repeated, mandibles clicking in what Sarah knew was amusement. And in all that time, what have your people accomplished that would merit a seat among the true powers of the galaxy? Sarah straightened her shoulders. In the past century, humanity has colonized 47 star systems, established peaceful trade relations with 36 species, and developed innovative solutions to resource scarcity that have been adopted by parlor tricks, interrupted the ethereal representative, their voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. You spread like a virus across dead rocks, yes. You trade trinkets with primitive species that have not yet evolved beyond physical existence. Your innovations are crude applications of principles we mastered when your sun was still forming. The crystalline delegate's voice resonated like struck crystal. The humans show promise for a young species, but they lack any unique contribution to galactic civilization. Their technology is derivative, their culture simplistic, their military capabilities adequate at best. Sarah felt the familiar burning in her chest that came with these sessions. If I may respectfully point out, the Terran Federation has maintained peace across all our territories for peace. The Verdani representative's voice rustled like wine through leaves. Maintained only because you have faced no true challenges. Your longest war lasted mere decades. Your greatest hardships have been solved by simply moving to new worlds when the old ones became difficult to maintain. You know nothing of the struggles that forge great civilizations. The collective's mechanical voice joined the chorus of dismissal. Our analysis indicates that humanity's rapid expansion is a liability, not an asset. You consume resources at an exponential rate, show little regard for long-term sustainability, and your democratic government structure is too chaotic to provide stable long-term partnerships. Sarah had heard all these arguments before. Every ambassador before her had faced the same criticism, the same dismissal, the same fundamental rejection of humanity's worthiness. She glanced back at her small delegation. Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's leading xenobiologist, gave her an encouraging nod. General Patricia Morrison, representing the Federation Defense Forces, maintained her stone-faced expression. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the physicist whose theories on space-time manipulation had advanced human understanding by centuries, simply watched with dark eyes that betrayed no emotion. The Council recognizes that humanity is enthusiastic, the Prime Speaker continued, and Sarah caught the subtle emphasis that made the words sound like an insult. Your species shows the typical expansion patterns of young sapient life. But enthusiasm without wisdom, growth without understanding, strength without restraint, these are the hallmarks of a species not yet ready for true galactic responsibility. What would it take? Sarah asked, abandoning the prepared speech she had been working toward. What specific criteria would humanity need to meet for you to consider our application? The question seemed to amuse the Council of Five. The Prime Speaker's mandibles clicked rapidly. An interesting question. Perhaps demonstrate mastery of a fundamental force of the universe? Achieve perfect harmony within your own species? Transcend the need for physical existence? Contribute something to galactic civilization that no other species can provide? The suggestions were delivered with the tone of someone offering an impossible task to an annoying child. Sarah felt the eyes of every delegation in the chamber upon her, waiting for her response, waiting for humanity to once again accept their rejection with grace and promise to try harder. Instead, Sarah nodded slowly. Thank you for the clarity, Prime Speaker. The Terran Federation will consider your suggestions carefully. She gathered her notes and turned to leave, her delegation following behind her. As they walked toward the exit, Sarah could hear the conversations resuming behind them, the great powers of the galaxy already moving on to more important matters. Another 20 years before we can petition again, Dr. Webb muttered as they reached the corridor outside the chamber. Same result every time. Maybe it's time to accept that they're not interested in having us as equals, General Morrison said quietly. We've been playing by their rules for 60 years, and it's gotten us nowhere. Sarah stopped walking and turned to face her team. Around them, the corridors of the Galactic Council station bustled with activity. Alien diplomats glided, scuttled, or phased past them, engaged in the complex web of relationships that governed interstellar politics. None of them paid any attention to the small group of humans standing in an alcove designed for atmospheric breathing species. There's something I need to tell all of you, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. Something that's been classified at the highest levels of Federation government for the past 5 years. Dr. Tanaka's eyebrows rose slightly. Sarah, if this is about the quantum research, it's not about any one project, Sarah interrupted. It's about all of them. Every research initiative, every exploration mission, every trade agreement we've signed in the past 50 years has been working towards something else. Something the Council doesn't know about. She paused, looking at each of her colleagues carefully. The Federation Council made a decision 3 years ago. We're withdrawing from all galactic institutions and trade networks. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually and completely. Within 10 years, humanity will be entirely self-sufficient. We won't need their technology, their trade routes, or their approval. General Morrison's expression didn't change, but her voice was sharp. That's impossible. The infrastructure alone is already being built, Sarah continued. The colony ships they mock as crude expansion, each one carries manufacturing capabilities that rival anything in this galaxy. This simplistic human culture, it's been adapting and learning from every species we've encountered, taking the best of everything and improving on it. The adequate military? You know better than anyone what our real capabilities are, Patricia. Dr. Webb was staring at her with growing comprehension. The xenobiology surveys. We haven't just been cataloging alien life forms, have we? We've been learning everything we can about how every species in this galaxy thinks, fights, trades, and survives, Sarah confirmed. And we've been doing it while they dismissed us as harmless newcomers not worth their attention. The group stood in silence for a moment, processing the implications. Finally, Dr. Tanaka spoke. How long have you known? I was briefed when I accepted this position, Sarah admitted. Every human ambassador for the past 20 years has known. Our job wasn't to convince them to accept us. It was to keep them convinced that we desperately wanted to be accepted while our real work happened in the background. And today's performance? General Morrison asked. Sarah smiled grimly. Today was my last day as a diplomat. In 6 months, when the withdrawal begins, they'll understand that humanity was never asking for permission to be a galactic power. We were announcing our intention to become one. The implications of what she was saying began to sink in for each of them. For 60 years, humanity had played the role of eager supplicants, begging for acceptance from species that saw them as barely evolved primitives. But what if that had all been an act? What if, while the great powers of the galaxy had been congratulating themselves on their superiority, humanity had been quietly building something entirely new? The quantum research, Dr. Tanaka said slowly. The theoretical work on space-time manipulation, the studies of dimensional barriers, the energy conversion projects, they're not theoretical anymore, are they? The first prototype was tested successfully 3 months ago, Sarah confirmed. We can now travel between any 2 points in the galaxy instantaneously. Not faster-than-light travel like the other species use. Actual instantaneous movement through folded space. Dr. Webb's face had gone pale. The biological adaptation programs. The genetic research we've been conducting on isolated worlds. Sarah, please tell me we haven't been. We haven't been creating weapons, Sarah assured him. But we have been solving every biological challenge we might face in any environment, on any world, in any situation. Humans can now survive and thrive in conditions that would kill any other known species. General Morrison was nodding slowly, her military mind clearly working through the strategic implications. The expansion pattern. It wasn't random, was it? Every system we've colonized has been chosen for strategic value. Every human colony is positioned to control a crucial resource, trade route, or defensive position, Sarah confirmed. When we withdraw from the galactic community, we'll still control everything that really matters. And they won't be able to do anything about it, because they won't understand what hit them until it's already over. The 4 humans stood in the alien corridor, surrounded by the casual arrogance of species that considered themselves the natural rulers of the galaxy, and contemplated the magnitude of what their people had accomplished in secret. For decades, humanity had endured condescension, dismissal, and outright mockery from the galactic community. They had been treated as junior partners, useful for dangerous exploration work, but unfit for real responsibility. In 6 months, that would all change. What happens to us? Dr. Webb asked quietly. Our research programs, our positions here, all of it's about to become irrelevant. Our real work begins now, Sarah replied. We're going home to help coordinate the transition. And then, when the galaxy realizes what humanity has become, we'll be ready to start building something entirely new. As they walked toward the transport bays that would take them back to human space, Sarah allowed herself one last look at the magnificent chamber where she had spent so many fruitless hours arguing for humanity's worth. Soon, the species gathered there would understand that they had made a critical error. They had assumed that humanity's desire for acceptance was weakness, that their rapid expansion was desperation, that their innovations were crude imitations of superior alien technology. They had been very, very wrong. The galaxy was about to discover that while they had been debating humanity's worthiness, humanity had been quietly preparing to make the entire question irrelevant. The age of human dependency was ending. The age of human independence was about to begin. And the species that had spent 60 years mocking Earth's children were about to learn what happened when you underestimated a species that had never stopped evolving, never stopped adapting, and never stopped growing stronger in the face of rejection. The Council had mocked Earth. Soon, they would understand the consequences of that mistake. 3 months after Ambassador Chen's final appearance before the Galactic Council, the first signs of change began to manifest across human space. To outside observers, the modifications appeared routine: standard infrastructure upgrades, normal trade route adjustments, typical colonial expansion activities. The galaxy's major powers, busy with their own complex political maneuvering, paid little attention to humanity's seemingly mundane activities. They should have been paying closer attention. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the final components of the new quantum relay network slide into position around the Kepler 442 system. The installation looked like nothing more than an elaborate communications array, and that's exactly what it was designed to appear to be. In reality, the quantum relays would allow instantaneous communication and transportation across the entire human sphere of influence. Network integration at 97%, reported Lieutenant Commander Zhang from the operations station. Final calibration should be complete within the hour. Elena nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display that showed the positions of every ship, station, and installation in the system. Kepler 442 had been one of humanity's earliest colonial successes, a system with 3 habitable worlds and abundant natural resources. It had also been strategically positioned along what would become one of the most important trade routes in human space. Now it was about to become something else entirely. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving confirmation signals from relay networks in the Sol, Wolf 359, and Tau Ceti systems. The quantum grid is coming online ahead of schedule." Elena smiled grimly. "Excellent. Signal the colony administrators to begin Phase 2 implementation. Authorization code Omega-77. Across the system, the true scope of humanity's preparations began to reveal itself. On the surface of Kepler 442b, massive underground complexes that have been officially classified as mineral extraction facilities, open to reveal something entirely different. Manufacturing plants capable of producing everything from basic consumer goods to advanced starship components emerged from subterranean hiding places. Automated systems that had been quietly building infrastructure for decades suddenly expanded their operations exponentially. Dr. Yuki Tanaka materialized on the bridge through the quantum transport system, her form solidifying from what appeared to be empty space. The technology still amazed Elena, even after months of testing. Instantaneous travel between any 2 points connected to the quantum network eliminated the need for traditional faster-than-light travel entirely. Phase 2 implementation is proceeding smoothly across all core systems, Dr. Tanaka reported, consulting the tablet in her hands. The manufacturing networks are operating at full capacity, and we're ahead of schedule on self-sufficiency targets. More importantly, our monitoring stations report no unusual interest from galactic intelligence services. Elena turned to face the physicist. What about the withdrawal from galactic trade networks? Have the other species noticed the reduction in human commercial activity? Remarkably little reaction so far, Dr. Tanaka replied. The Vorthack Trade Ministry sent a routine inquiry about reduced human purchases of their quantum processors, but they seem to have accepted our explanation that we're developing domestic alternatives. The Crystalline Mining Consortium has noted decreased human demand for their rare earth elements, but they've attributed it to natural market fluctuations. They have no idea that we've been stockpiling everything we need for the past decade, Elena mused, or that our domestic alternatives are actually superior to anything they produce. The irony wasn't lost on either woman. For 60 years, humanity had been purchasing technology, resources, and expertise from the galactic community. Everyone assumed the humans were dependent on these imports for their continued expansion and development. What they didn't realize was that every purchase had been carefully studied, reverse-engineered, and improved upon. Human scientists had spent decades learning the principles behind every piece of alien technology they encountered, then developing better versions using uniquely human approaches to problem-solving. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Zhang announced, "We're receiving a priority communication from the Federation Council. Admiral Morrison is requesting a secure conference." Elena nodded. "Transfer it to the ready room and establish quantum encryption." "Dr. Tanaka, you want to hear this?" The two women entered the ready room adjacent to the bridge, where a holographic projection system displayed the image of Admiral Patricia Morrison, former general and now head of the Federation Defense Forces. Her expression was serious, but satisfied. "Elena, Yuki," Morrison began without preamble, "I'm calling to inform you that Phase 3 has been authorized. We're moving to active withdrawal from all galactic institutions." Dr. Tanaka leaned forward. "All institutions? Including the scientific cooperation agreements?" "Everything," Morrison confirmed. "Trade partnerships, research collaborations, diplomatic exchanges, cultural programs, all of it ends over the next 6 months. We're implementing the complete independence protocol." Elena felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with anxiety. Phase 3 represented the point of no return. Once humanity began actively withdrawing from galactic society, there would be no hiding their true capabilities. What's prompted the acceleration? I thought we had another 2 years before full implementation. Morrison's expression darkened. Intelligence reports indicate that the Vorthack are planning what they call a guidance intervention in human space. They've decided that our expansion rate represents a potential threat to galactic stability and are proposing to help us develop more appropriate colonial policies. "Meaning they want to control our growth," Dr. Tanaka said, her voice flat. "Meaning they want to prevent it entirely," Morrison corrected. "The proposal includes mandatory technological limitations, restricted access to certain star systems, and direct oversight of human military development. They're planning to present it as a beneficial partnership." Elena understood immediately. It's a takeover disguised as assistance. They've finally decided that humanity is becoming too successful to ignore. Exactly, which means our timeline has been moved up. We implement full withdrawal beginning next week, and we reveal our true capabilities if anyone tries to interfere with our operations. Dr. Tanaka was already working through the implications. The quantum network isn't fully operational across all systems yet. If we withdraw now, there'll be a 3-month gap where some of our colonies will be operating independently without instantaneous communication or support. Those colonies have been preparing for this possibility for years, Morrison reminded her. Each human world has been developed to be completely self-sufficient if necessary. We've learned from every isolation event in human history and made sure our people can survive and thrive even if cut off from the rest of human space. Elena thought about the massive underground complexes she had observed throughout human space over the past decade. Every world had them. Hidden manufacturing centers, resource stockpiles, defensive installations, and population centers that could sustain human civilization even if the surface installations were destroyed. It was paranoid planning on a scale that would have seemed impossible to earlier generations, but humanity had learned to think in terms of worst-case scenarios. What about the species that have been genuinely friendly to us? Dr. Tanaka asked. The Aquari have been excellent research partners, and the smaller species that we've helped establish themselves in galactic society, they don't deserve to be caught up in whatever comes next. Morrison nodded approvingly. We'll continue to honor our agreements with species that have treated us as equals rather than subjects. But that's a very short list. Most of our so-called friendships in galactic society have been relationships between superiors and inferiors, with humanity firmly established in the inferior position. Elena had experienced enough galactic diplomacy to know Morrison was right. Even the species that were considered friendly to humanity had a condescending attitude that assumed human inferiority. They were willing to trade with humans, work with them on certain projects, and even socialize with them, but always from a position of assumed superiority. Humanity was the enthusiastic younger sibling that the older civilizations tolerated but didn't respect. There's something else, Morrison continued. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual fleet movements in Vortex space. Large military formations moving toward the borders of human territory. They're not being subtle about it. Intimidation tactics, Elena realized. They want us to see them coming, so we'll be more receptive to their guidance intervention proposal. That's our assessment as well. Which brings me to the real reason for this call. Elena, the Prometheus, and her sister ships are being reassigned to Perimeter Defense Command. You'll be responsible for monitoring the approaches to core human space and ensuring that no uninvited guests interfere with our withdrawal operations. Elena felt her pulse quicken. Perimeter Defense Command was responsible for protecting humanity's most sensitive operations. The assignment meant that the Federation leadership trusted her completely, but it also meant she would likely be one of the first to face any hostile action from the galactic community. "What are our rules of engagement?" she asked. Morrison's smile was sharp. "Defend human space by any means necessary. But, Elena, try to avoid revealing the full extent of our capabilities unless absolutely required. We want them to underestimate us for as long as possible." Dr. Tanaka was reviewing data on her tablet. "Admiral, the quantum weapon systems are fully operational across all platforms. If we need to demonstrate our defensive capabilities, we can do so without revealing the transportation network or the manufacturing capacity." "Good. Remember, our goal is to withdraw quietly and efficiently. If they leave us alone, they'll never know what we've become. But if they try to force the issue," Morrison paused meaningfully, "they'll discover that humanity has learned a great deal during our 60 years in galactic society." After the communication ended, Elena and Dr. Tanaka remained in the ready room, contemplating the magnitude of what was about to unfold. For decades, humanity had been building toward this moment. The transition from a dependent species seeking acceptance to an independent civilization capable of standing on its own terms. "Are we making the right choice?" Dr. Tanaka asked quietly. "Cutting ourselves off from the galactic community means giving up access to thousands of years of accumulated knowledge and wisdom." Elena considered the question carefully. "What knowledge? What wisdom? We've been part of galactic society for 60 years, and in all that time, what have they taught us that we couldn't learn on our own? They've shared their basic technologies with us, but always versions that keep us dependent on them for maintenance and upgrades. They've included us in their scientific projects, but only in subordinate roles where we provide labor while they take credit for discoveries. They've allowed us to participate in their trade networks, but only as suppliers of raw materials and consumers of their finished goods." "But the cultural exchange," Dr. Tanaka protested. "The art, the philosophy, the different perspectives on existence itself, all of which we can continue to study and learn from without accepting political and economic subordination," Elena replied. "Nothing we're doing prevents us from appreciating alien culture or learning from alien wisdom. We're just refusing to accept permanent junior status as the price for access to it." Dr. Tanaka nodded slowly. "And if they don't let us withdraw peacefully?" Elena's expression hardened. "Then they'll discover what humans are really capable of when we stop trying to fit into someone else's definition of acceptable behavior." As the two women returned to the bridge, the quantum relay network completed its final calibration sequence. Across human space, identical networks were coming online, creating an instantaneous communication and transportation grid that connected every human world, station, and ship. The technology represented a fundamental breakthrough that would have revolutionized galactic civilization if humanity had chosen to share it. Instead, it would remain humanity's secret advantage as they embarked on the greatest gamble in their species' history. They were betting that 60 years of careful preparation, technological development, and strategic positioning had given them everything they needed to stand alone against the combined power of 47 alien civilizations. In 6 months, they would discover if that bet had paid off. The withdrawal had begun. The Vorthack Intelligence Analysis Center on their capital world of hegemony prime hummed with activity as Senior Intelligence Coordinator Zelthak reviewed the latest reports from human space. The facility, carved deep into the planet's crystalline core, processed information from across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Today, however, all attention was focused on a single species that had seemed insignificant just months earlier. The patterns are becoming impossible to ignore, reported Subordinator Vixran, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays that filled the analysis chamber. Human trade activity has decreased by 73% across all major commercial networks. Scientific collaboration projects are being terminated with increasing frequency. Most concerning, their diplomatic presence at council stations has been reduced to skeleton crews. Zelthak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully as he studied the data streams. The Vorthack had been monitoring human activities for decades, viewing them as a potentially useful client species that might eventually mature into valuable junior partners. The sudden shift in human behavior was both puzzling and alarming. What are their military deployments? Zelthak asked. Are they consolidating forces in preparation for some internal conflict? That's where the analysis becomes truly disturbing, Vixran replied, manipulating the holographic interface to display tactical information. Human military assets have not consolidated. Instead, they appear to have multiplied. Our reconnaissance indicates the presence of at least 3 times as many vessels as previously estimated, and many of them are of unknown design configuration. Zelthak felt the first stirrings of genuine concern. The Vorthack Empire had maintained galactic dominance for over 2 millennia through superior technology, strategic intelligence, and careful management of potential threats. A species that could conceal the true size and capability of its military represented a significant intelligence failure. How was this possible? He demanded. We have maintained observation posts throughout human space for 40 years. Where did these additional vessels come from? Our best assessment is that humans have been constructing vessels in hidden facilities, possibly underground installations on their colony worlds. But, sir, the implications go beyond simple military expansion. Vixran paused, her biometric readings indicating elevated stress levels. We have detected energy signatures that don't match any known technology in our databases. The implications of that statement sent ripples of alarm through Zelthak's consciousness. The Vorthack Technological Database contained detailed specifications for every known starfaring species in the galaxy. Unknown energy signatures suggested that humanity had developed technologies independently, without relying on standard galactic scientific paradigms. Show me the energy analysis, Zelthak commanded. The holographic display shifted to show electromagnetic spectrum analysis from the human colony world of New Geneva. What Zelthak saw defied easy explanation. The energy readings showed patterns that seemed to indicate matter-energy conversion at efficiency levels that should have been impossible with any known technology. Subcoordinator, how long have these readings been observed? The first anomalous signatures appeared approximately 18 months ago, Vixran reported. Initially, we dismissed them as sensor malfunctions or unusual natural phenomena. However, similar readings have now been detected across 27 human colony systems. Zelthak's anxiety deepened. 18 months ago, the Vorthack High Command had been developing plans for the guidance intervention that would bring human expansion under proper galactic oversight. If humans had been developing advanced technologies during that same period, the intervention might face unexpected complications. Have we attempted direct observation of human facilities? Yes, sir. 3 intelligence-gathering missions have been dispatched to human space over the past 6 months. 2 have returned with incomplete data due to unexpected sensor interference. The third, Vixran hesitated. The third mission failed to return entirely, Zelthak concluded grimly. How many ships were lost? The reconnaissance vessel Vigilant Observer and its escort wing. 5 ships total, including some of our most advanced stealth technology. The loss of an entire intelligence mission was unprecedented in recent Vorthack history. Their stealth technology was considered undetectable by any species in the galaxy. If humans had developed countermeasures, it suggested technological capabilities far beyond what anyone had suspected. Zelthak activated his secure communication system and contacted Prime Intelligence Director Carthex at the highest classification level. When the connection established, he could see the concern in his superior's compound eyes. "Director, we have a situation that requires immediate high command attention," Zelthak began. "Our analysis of human activities suggests that they may pose a significant strategic threat." "Impossible," Carthex replied immediately. "Humans are a primitive species barely 2 centuries into space travel. Our military assessment considers them a minor regional power at best." "Sir, with respect, our military assessment appears to have been catastrophically incorrect." Zelthak transmitted the energy analysis data and mission loss reports. "Humans have been concealing technological developments that rival or exceed our own capabilities." There was a long pause as Carthex reviewed the information. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted to cold professionalism. "How long do you estimate humans have been developing these capabilities?" "Based on the evidence, potentially decades." "Sir, we believe that human expansion, technological development, and diplomatic activities have all been part of a coordinated long-term strategy. They haven't been seeking galactic acceptance. They've been preparing for galactic independence." The implications of that assessment rippled through both Vorthack officers. For 60 years, the galactic community had viewed human diplomatic efforts as the eager attempts of a young species to gain acceptance among their betters. What if those efforts had actually been intelligence-gathering operations designed to learn everything possible about galactic civilization before humanity withdrew from it entirely? "Contact Admiral Thex more immediately," Carthex ordered. "I want a complete strategic assessment of human military capabilities, and I want it within the next standard cycle. If humans represent a genuine threat to galactic stability, we need to act before they complete whatever they're planning." Meanwhile, in the Ethereal Collective's dimensional monitoring facility, intelligence specialist Zephyra observed the same patterns from an entirely different perspective. The Ethereals existed partially outside normal space-time, giving them unique insights into the flow of events across multiple dimensional layers. What they had observed in human space was unlike anything in their considerable experience. "The humans are manipulating fundamental forces in ways that should not be possible," Zephyra reported to the collective consciousness. "They appear to have developed technologies that operate outside the normal constraints of space-time." The response came from multiple dimensional layers simultaneously, representing the combined wisdom of millions of ethereal minds. "Explain the nature of these manipulations." "They have created what appears to be a network of quantum entanglement points that allow instantaneous communication and transportation across vast distances. But more than that, they seem to have solved the energy requirements for such technology through methods we do not understand." The collective pondered this information across multiple realities. Quantum entanglement communication was known to be theoretically possible, but the energy requirements made it impractical for anything beyond laboratory experiments. If humans had somehow overcome those limitations, they possessed capabilities that could fundamentally alter the balance of galactic power. "What of their dimensional stability?" the collective inquired. "This is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of our observations," Zephyra replied. "Human space shows signs of dimensional reinforcement that we have never observed before. It appears they have found ways to strengthen the fabric of space-time itself, making their territories resistant to many forms of attack or infiltration." The Ethereal Collective had spent eons studying the manipulation of reality across multiple dimensions. The idea that a species barely 3 centuries old had developed techniques unknown to them was profoundly unsettling. In the crystalline assembly's computation matrices, Logic Processor Prime Unit 00 one analyzed the economic implications of human withdrawal from galactic trade networks. The conclusions were disturbing. Human trade dependencies have been systematically eliminated over a 40-year period, the logic processor reported to the assembly. Analysis indicates that humans have achieved complete self-sufficiency across all critical resource categories. This level of economic independence should not be possible for a species of their development level. The crystalline assembly had built their galactic influence through economic manipulation and technological dependence. They provided advanced manufacturing and computational services to younger species in exchange for long-term economic partnerships that ensured continued dependence. Humanity's achievement of complete self-sufficiency threatened the fundamental basis of crystalline power. What are the implications for our strategic position? The assembly inquired. If human independence becomes widely known, other client species may seek to emulate their model. The economic foundations of our galactic influence could be undermined within a single generation. The realization struck all three major powers simultaneously. Humanity's withdrawal from galactic society wasn't just about human independence. It was a demonstration that complete self-sufficiency was possible, that species could develop advanced technologies without relying on the established powers, and that the entire structure of galactic civilization might be based on artificial dependencies rather than natural limitations. On the Galactic Council Station, emergency sessions convened as intelligence reports from the three major powers confirmed what none of them wanted to acknowledge. Humanity had spent 60 years learning everything they could about galactic civilization, while secretly developing capabilities that none of the established powers fully understood. The species that had been mocked as primitive expansionists had played the longest game in galactic history. While everyone else had been focused on short-term political maneuvering and economic advantage, humans have been building the foundation for complete independence from the galactic order. Prime Speaker Zelmach of the Vorthack addressed the emergency council session with barely controlled alarm. Fellow counselors, we face an unprecedented situation. A species we have dismissed as inferior has demonstrated capabilities that rival or exceed our own. If we do not act immediately, the balance of galactic power may be irreversibly altered. The ethereal representative's multidimensional voice carried notes of confusion and concern. The humans have achieved technological breakthroughs that challenge our understanding of physical law. They may represent a paradigm shift in galactic civilization. The crystalline delegate's harmonic tones resonated with cold logic. Economic analysis indicates that human independence could inspire similar movements among our client species. The stability of current galactic order is now in question. As the Council debated their response, long-range sensors detected the first signs of the most significant fleet movement in galactic history. Vorthack battle groups, ethereal reality manipulators, and crystalline war forms were converging on the borders of human space. The galactic powers had finally decided that humanity's independence was a threat that could not be tolerated. They were about to discover just how much humanity had learned during their 60 years of apparent submission. The UES Prometheus hung in the darkness between star systems, her quantum sensors monitoring the approach of the largest hostile fleet in recorded galactic history. Captain Elena Vasquez stood before the main tactical display, watching as red icons representing enemy vessels continued to multiply across the holographic projection. The combined might of three galactic superpowers was converging on human space with obvious hostile intent. Final count shows 1,437 capital ships. Captain, reported Commander Zhang from the tactical station. Vorthack Battle Hive configurations, ethereal reality manipulation vessels, and crystalline war forms. They're not planning a diplomatic mission. Elena nodded grimly. The sheer size of the enemy fleet was staggering, representing a significant portion of the combined military strength of the galactic powers. In traditional terms, humanity faced impossible odds. A few dozen human worlds against an armada that could devastate entire star systems. Fortunately, humanity was no longer fighting by traditional terms. Signal all perimeter defense vessels to implement Protocol 7, Elena commanded. Quantum stealth activation, passive sensor mode only, and prepare for coordinated response. Around her, the bridge of the Prometheus seemed to shimmer and fade as the quantum stealth system engaged. Unlike conventional stealth technology that simply reduced sensor signatures, quantum stealth created a localized distortion in space-time that made the vessel effectively exist in a parallel dimensional layer. The enemy fleet would be attacking empty space, while human ships operated from an overlapping but separate reality. Dr. Tanaka materialized on the bridge through the quantum transport network, her expression mixing excitement with concern. Elena, we're receiving tactical data from monitoring stations throughout the approach routes. The enemy commanders are implementing a standard overwhelming force doctrine. They plan to simply crush any resistance through sheer numbers. They're still thinking in terms of conventional warfare, Elena realized. They have no idea what they're actually facing. The enemy fleet's approach strategy confirmed Elena's assessment. Vorthack commanders had deployed their forces in the traditional battle line formation that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries. Massive capital ships formed the core of their assault groups, supported by swarms of smaller vessels and protected by overlapping defensive fields. It was a formation designed to overwhelm enemy positions through concentrated firepower and superior numbers. What the Vorthack didn't realize was that human defensive doctrine had abandoned the concept of fixed positions entirely. "Captain," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Morrison aboard the Indomitable. Fleet-wide tactical conference in 30 seconds. The holographic projection expanded to show the command decks of 12 other human vessels, each one invisible to enemy sensors but linked through the quantum communication network. Admiral Morrison's image dominated the display, her expression calm but determined. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we've been preparing for," Morrison began without preamble. "Enemy forces are implementing a three-pronged assault designed to overwhelm our core systems through coordinated simultaneous attacks. Traditional doctrine would call for us to establish defensive perimeters and attempt to hold critical positions." She paused, her smile sharp. "We're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to demonstrate why humanity's approach to warfare has evolved beyond anything the galactic powers understand. Captain Chun, initiate Phase 1 operations." Captain Sarah Chun, Elena's former colleague, now commanding the Endeavor, nodded acknowledgement. "Phase 1 commencing now, Admiral." Across human space, the demonstration began. The Vorthack First Battle Group, consisting of over 200 capital ships, approached the Kepler 442 system expecting to find a heavily defended colonial stronghold. Instead, they found empty space. The massive installations that their intelligence had indicated should be present simply weren't there. Orbital stations, defensive platforms, even the colonies themselves had vanished without a trace. "Battle Group Commander," the intelligence officer reported with confusion evident in his translated voice. "Sensors show no sign of human presence in the system. All previously detected installations appear to have been relocated." Commander Hive Prime Zektar's mandibles clicked with frustration. "Relocated? Orbital installations cannot simply be moved. Expand sensor sweeps and locate the human defensive positions." What Zektar couldn't know was that every installation, every defensive platform, and every colonial population center in the system had been transported through the quantum network to backup positions in parallel dimensional space. The humans weren't hiding their assets. They had literally moved them to a reality layer where the Vorthack couldn't detect or attack them. Similar scenes played out across the war zone as ethereal and crystalline forces encountered the same phenomenon. Entire star systems that intelligence reports had indicated were heavily populated and defended proved to be empty of any human presence. The massive enemy fleet found itself attacking nothing while human forces observed from parallel reality layers. Phase 1 complete. Captain Chun reported to the fleet conference. Enemy forces have committed to attacking non-existent targets across 12 star systems. They're beginning to show signs of confusion and tactical discord. Admiral Morrison nodded with satisfaction. Excellent. Phase 2 is authorized. All ships implement quantum displacement tactics and begin precision strike operations. Elena felt a familiar thrill as the Prometheus shifted from passive observation to active combat mode. The quantum displacement system allowed her ship to appear at any location within several light years instantaneously, strike targets with devastating precision, then disappear back into parallel space before enemy forces could respond. The first indication the Vorthack received that they were under attack came when 3 of their capital ships simply ceased to exist. One moment, they were part of the battle line formation. The next, they had been reduced to expanding clouds of plasma and debris. The attacks had come from directions where no enemy vessels had been detected, using weapons that exceeded any known energy output parameters. Report. Zektar demanded as his flagship sensors registered the destruction of 3 major vessels. Unknown energy signatures detected immediately prior to each attack. His tactical officer reported with obvious panic. No visual confirmation of attacking vessels. Weapon types unknown. Damage patterns indicate complete molecular disintegration. More ships died as the Endeavor, Resolution, and Defiant materialized from quantum space, delivered precision strikes with weapons that converted matter directly into energy, then vanished again before return fire could be coordinated. The human vessels appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking with impossible accuracy and devastating effect. The ethereal forces found themselves facing an even more disturbing phenomenon. Their reality manipulation technology, which had dominated galactic warfare for millennia, proved useless against human quantum displacement. When they attempted to destabilize local space-time to prevent enemy movement, human ships simply shifted to different dimensional layers where the ethereal attacks had no effect. The humans are operating across multiple reality states simultaneously, the ethereal battle coordinator reported to the Combined Fleet Command. Our dimensional manipulation protocols cannot affect targets that exist in quantum superposition. The crystalline war forms, massive geometric constructs capable of rearranging matter at the atomic level, discovered that their primary weapons were equally ineffective. Their matter manipulation fields required targets to exist within conventional space-time, but human ships phased in and out of normal reality too quickly for the crystalline weapons to achieve target lock. Within 2 hours of the initial assault, the combined enemy fleet had lost over 60 capital ships without inflicting a single casualty on human forces. The technological superiority that had maintained galactic order for thousands of years had proven completely ineffective against humanity's quantum-based warfare doctrine. Phase 3 authorization requested. Admiral Morrison announced to the fleet conference. We are prepared to demonstrate that human defensive capabilities extend beyond mere evasion. Elena watched as authorization codes flowed through the quantum network. Phase 3 would reveal the true extent of human technological development, technologies that had been developed in secret while the galaxy dismissed humanity as primitive. What came next would fundamentally alter the balance of galactic power forever. All ships target enemy command vessels for non-lethal demonstration strikes. Morrison commanded. Show them what we're really capable of. The Prometheus selected the Vorthack flagship as its target. Elena watched the tactical display as her ship's quantum weapons locked onto the massive vessel that served as the command center for the enemy assault. But instead of destroying the ship, the quantum beam would simply disable its primary systems while leaving the crew unharmed. Firing, the weapons officer announced. The quantum beam struck the Vorthack flagship and produced an effect that defied everything the enemy fleet thought they understood about warfare. Instead of exploding or being destroyed, the massive ship simply stopped. Every system aboard the vessel shut down simultaneously. Engines, weapons, life support, communications. Everything ceased to function in perfect synchronization. "What just happened to our flagship?" demanded Subcommander Victal from the secondary command vessel. "All systems have been remotely deactivated," the fleet technical officer reported in disbelief. "Every computer core, every power generator, every backup system has been shut down simultaneously. But there's no physical damage to any component." Similar effects rippled across the enemy fleet as human ships demonstrated their ability to remotely disable any technology in the galaxy through quantum manipulation. Entire battle groups found their vessels reduced to powerless hulks drifting in space, their crews unharmed but completely helpless. The demonstration continued for 12 minutes. 12 minutes during which the combined military might of 3 galactic superpowers was systematically neutralized by a human fleet that remained almost entirely invisible to enemy sensors. When it ended, over 300 enemy vessels hung powerless in space, while their crews contemplated the magnitude of what they had just experienced. Enemy fleet commanders, Admiral Morrison's voice broadcast on all frequencies, "You have just witnessed a demonstration of humanity's true capabilities. Your vessels have not been destroyed because we chose not to destroy them. Your crews remain alive because we chose to let them live. Your fleets remain in human space because we have not yet decided to remove them." She paused, allowing the implications to sink in across hundreds of enemy ships. Humanity withdraws from galactic society effective immediately. Any attempt to interfere with human operations or territories will result in consequences far more severe than what you have experienced today. You have one standard day to remove all non-human vessels from human space. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war. The communication ended, leaving the combined enemy fleet to contemplate a new and terrifying reality. The species they had mocked as primitive had just demonstrated the ability to neutralize their most advanced military technology with contemptuous ease. Worse, they had done so while remaining almost entirely undetected, striking from dimensional layers that the galactic powers didn't even know existed. As Elena watched the enemy fleet begin its withdrawal, she reflected on the magnitude of what humanity had accomplished. For 60 years, they had endured condescension and dismissal while secretly developing technologies that rendered the entire galactic military establishment obsolete. They had learned everything they could about their rivals, then developed countermeasures that those rivals couldn't even comprehend. The age of galactic dominance by ancient civilizations had ended in a single afternoon. The age of human ascendancy was about to begin. But first, the galaxy would have to come to terms with the reality that the species they had spent 60 years underestimating had just demonstrated the power to reshape the fundamental nature of interstellar civilization. The withdrawal was no longer humanity's request for independence. It was their declaration of supremacy. 6 months after the failed assault on human space, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the third time since what historians were already calling the demonstration. The vast chamber that had once buzzed with the confident chatter of species secure in their galactic dominance now echoed with hushed conversations and nervous energy. Empty sections marked where smaller species had withdrawn from galactic institutions entirely, choosing to seek accommodation with humanity rather than remain allied with the traditional powers. Prime Speaker Zelmach of the Vorthak Empire stood before the assembly, his once proud bearing now carrying the weight of unprecedented military humiliation. His empire, which had dominated 3 spiral arms for over 2 millennia, had seen its influence collapse almost overnight as client species scrambled to distance themselves from the power that had proven helpless against human technology. "Fellow counselors," Zelmach began, his translated voice lacking its former authority, "we face a crisis that threatens the very foundations of galactic civilization. The human withdrawal has created cascading effects across all established power structures." The holographic displays around the chamber showed the scope of the transformation. Trade routes that had operated for centuries were collapsing as human-controlled systems became inaccessible. Resource extraction operations that depended on human labor and expertise had shut down. Most critically, dozens of client species had declared independence, following humanity's example by withdrawing from galactic institutions. The economic implications alone are staggering, continued the crystalline representative, their harmonic voice resonating with calculated concern. Human territories controlled 37% of known rare element deposits, 43% of manufacturing capacity outside the core worlds, and over 60% of agricultural production in the outer systems. Their withdrawal has created scarcity across all major economic sectors. The ethereal delegate's multidimensional presence flickered with what might have been frustration. Economic concerns are secondary to the technological implications. Human capabilities exceed our understanding of physical law. They have demonstrated mastery of quantum manipulation, dimensional displacement, and matter-energy conversion at scales we considered impossible. Ambassador Sarah Chun sat in the human diplomatic section, flanked by a minimal staff and observing the proceedings with detached interest. She had returned to the council not as a supplicant seeking acceptance, but as the representative of a power that had fundamentally altered the galactic balance. The contrast with her position 6 months earlier was stark. Ambassador Chun, Prime Speaker Zelmok addressed her directly. Humanity's actions have created instability across the galaxy. Surely your people must recognize their responsibility to help maintain galactic order. Sarah stood slowly, her movement drawing the attention of every delegate in the chamber. When she spoke, her voice carried the quiet confidence of someone representing unassailable strength. Prime Speaker, you speak of responsibility for galactic order, but whose order are you referring to? The order that dismissed humanity as primitive for 60 years, while we developed technologies you still don't understand? The order that planned to impose guidance intervention on our territory when our expansion became inconvenient? Or perhaps the order that sent 1,400 warships to enforce compliance with your vision of appropriate human behavior? The chamber fell silent as Sarah's words highlighted the fundamental hypocrisy of the galactic establishment's position. They had never treated humanity as equals, had never consulted human interests when making decisions that affected human space, and had resorted to military force when humanity chose independence over subordination. Your people possess technologies that could revolutionize galactic civilization, the ethereal representative interjected. Surely the ethical course would be to share these advances for the benefit of all species. Sarah's smile was sharp. Ethical? You mean the way you shared your reality manipulation technology with humanity? Oh, wait, you didn't. You maintained technological advantages to preserve your dominant position while ensuring other species remained dependent on your capabilities. She activated a holographic projector that displayed detailed technical specifications. Every technology you're referring to has been offered to galactic civilization multiple times over the past 60 years. Our scientists published preliminary research on quantum displacement 17 years ago. The Vorthack Science Ministry dismissed it as theoretical speculation with no practical applications. We shared early work on dimensional manipulation with the Ethereal Collective 23 years ago. They classified it as primitive misunderstanding of advanced concepts. The Crystalline Assembly was offered partnership in matter-energy conversion research and declined because they considered our approach unnecessarily complex. The implications of her words rippled through the assembly. Humanity hadn't developed their technologies in secret by choice. They had been forced to work independently because the galactic powers had dismissed their contributions as worthless. You had your chance to collaborate with humanity as equals, Sarah continued. Instead, you chose to maintain relationships based on your assumed superiority. Now that we've proven that assumption incorrect, you want to claim ethical high ground by demanding we share technologies you refuse to take seriously when we offered them freely. Prime Speaker Zelmok's mandibles clicked with agitation. The security implications of human independence cannot be ignored. Your withdrawal has inspired rebellion among dozens of client species. The stability that has maintained peace for thousands of years is collapsing. Peace for whom? Sarah asked pointedly. The hegemonic species that benefited from the existing order? Because I can name 47 species that would describe the last 1,000 years as systematic exploitation rather than peace. She gestured to the empty sections of the chamber. Those species that have withdrawn from galactic institutions haven't done so because humanity encouraged rebellion. They've done so because our example demonstrated that independence was possible. They've realized they don't need your permission to develop their own technologies, control their own resources, or determine their own futures. Dr. Marcus Webb, now serving as Sarah's scientific advisor, stood to address the assembly. The Council seems to believe that humanity's technological development represents some kind of unprecedented disruption to natural galactic order. But that assumption reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how technological advancement actually works. He activated additional holographic displays showing the progression of human scientific development. Human technology didn't spring from nowhere. We spent 60 years studying, learning from, and building upon the foundation of knowledge represented in this chamber. Every breakthrough we achieved was made possible by collaboration with dozens of species, trade relationships that gave us access to diverse materials and perspectives, and the accumulated wisdom of galactic civilization. The difference, Dr. Webb continued, is that we approach that knowledge as students rather than supplicants. We learned your principles and then asked ourselves how those principles could be improved, modified, or applied in new ways. We didn't accept that your solutions were the only possible solutions. The crystalline delegates' harmonic tones carried notes of genuine confusion. If human technological development was based on galactic knowledge, why were you able to achieve breakthroughs that escaped our own research efforts? Dr. Webb smiled. Because you had no incentive to pursue those breakthroughs. Your civilizations had achieved technological dominance and stable power structures. Innovation that might disrupt those structures was inherently threatening to your continued dominance. Humanity had every incentive to innovate because we were starting from a position of technological dependence. Sarah resumed her address to the assembly. The Council continues to frame this situation as a human problem that requires a galactic solution. But that framing ignores the fundamental reality of what has occurred. Humanity hasn't disrupted galactic civilization. We've demonstrated that galactic civilization was based on artificial limitations. She paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. Every species in this chamber has the potential to achieve technological independence. The resources, knowledge, and capabilities exist. What prevented that achievement was a power structure that discouraged innovation in favor of maintaining established hierarchies. What humanity offers the galaxy is not our specific technologies, but proof that technological advancement beyond current limitations is possible. We offer the example that species don't have to accept permanent subordinate status in exchange for access to advanced technologies. The Prime Speaker leaned forward, his voice carrying a note of desperation. Then, what does humanity propose? Complete dissolution of galactic institutions? An end to the cooperation that has enabled interstellar civilization? Sarah considered the question carefully. Humanity proposes the establishment of genuine equality among spacefaring species. Trade relationships based on mutual benefit rather than dependency. Technological cooperation among peers rather than hierarchical knowledge distribution. Political structures that acknowledge the sovereignty of individual species rather than imposing galactic hegemony. In practical terms, she continued, this means replacing the current council structure with a federation of independent species. No species would have inherent authority over any other species. Technological development would be encouraged rather than restricted. Military forces would exist for defense rather than enforcement of political compliance. The ethereal representative's multidimensional presence flickered with what might have been consideration. Such a structure would require fundamental changes to power relationships that have existed for millennia. Many species have built their entire civilizations around their positions within the current hierarchy. Then, those civilizations will need to adapt, Sarah replied matter-of-factly. The current hierarchy was never sustainable long-term because it was based on artificial technological limitations. Now that those limitations have been proven false, attempting to maintain the old order through force would require increasingly authoritarian measures. She activated a final holographic display showing star charts of the galaxy. Humanity controls 47 star systems directly, but our influence extends far beyond our territorial boundaries. Every species that has achieved independence following our example represents a validation of the principle that technological advancement and political autonomy are natural rights rather than privileges granted by galactic authorities. The choice facing this council is simple, Sarah concluded. Adapt to a galaxy where multiple species possess advanced technologies and independent capabilities, or attempt to maintain dominance through increasingly desperate measures that will ultimately fail. As Sarah resumed her seat, the chamber erupted in heated discussions among the various delegations. The traditional powers found themselves facing an impossible situation. They could not defeat humanity militarily. They could not contain the spread of independence movements among their client species, and they could not maintain their technological advantages now that the principles behind advanced development had been demonstrated. Over the following days, private negotiations between humanity and individual species revealed the true scope of the transformation taking place. The Equari had already achieved breakthrough innovations in biotechnology using principles learned from human research. The silicon-based Methodists had developed advanced computational systems that rivaled crystalline technology. Even some of the more advanced species were discovering that collaboration with humanity produced results superior to anything they had achieved independently. The old galactic order was indeed ending, but what emerged to replace it would be far more dynamic and innovative than the stable but stagnant civilization that had preceded it. Humanity's silent exit had shaken the galaxy not through destruction, but through demonstration. They had proven that greatness was not the exclusive domain of ancient civilizations, that technological advancement was not a finite resource to be hoarded, and that the future belonged to those willing to evolve rather than those content to maintain existing advantages. The species that had mocked Earth's children as primitive upstarts now found themselves students in a galaxy where humanity had become the teacher. The age of enforced stability was ending. The age of limitless possibility was about to begin, and at its center stood humanity, no longer seeking acceptance from powers that had never deserved their submission, but offering partnership to any species willing to join them in building something greater than either could achieve alone. The Council had mocked Earth. Earth had responded by offering to remake the galaxy. The students had become the masters, not through conquest, but through the simple demonstration that mastery was possible for anyone willing to reach for it.